It was an endeavour just to climb the steps to Luna's room. Her sister had been insisting she drop by at exactly 3 o'clock so she could show her some new book she found, and considering the Arcanacy Draconis, the most forbidden and dangerous book of spells in existence, had vanished from the library only a few weeks prior, the princess found herself harbouring uncomfortable suspicions about her sister. There was little denying the difficulty both sisters were having to readjusting to co-rulership. Luna was all too eager to resume her duties over the night, but getting her back into the government was another can of worms. She certainly had the brains for it, and made more progress readjusting to the modern world than Celestia would have. There was another side to leadership she lacked. Over the last 1,000 years, Celestia had built up quite the rapport with her subjects, as well as the charisma needed to keep a court of self-serving nobles in line. Luna had the handicap of, more or less, ceasing to exist for 1,000 years. Celestia had aged and matured in that time, but Luna was still more or less a socially awkward teenager. Well, not technically, but the sisters counted the years quite differently from just about everything else, save perhaps dragons. In many ways, she was still the pony she used to be before her transformation. By the time she reached Luna's door, she was ready to collapse right at her doorstep. Her hoof knocked, ever so gently, on the wooden door. Luna's small voice shouted back, "Come in!" It was right then she noticed the first real sign that something was wrong. Luna's personal guards weren't at the door. In fact, no guards could be found anywhere. Still, her affection and duty to her returned sister overrode whatever alarm bells were ringing in her head. As Celestia stepped inside, a niggling, nagging feeling forced its way to the forefront of her mind. It was the same savvy that had saved her many times from the countless dangers being a princess usually brought. She was half expecting a net to fall, or spikes to pop out from the ground, or Luna to suddenly shift back to the mare and the moon. But no, the room was completely normal. Well, save for the rather ugly, out-of-place throw rug, but neither sister really had the knack for feng shui. What was I thinking? Nightmare Moon was defeated, and it may be difficult sometimes, but she would never do something so horrible. Luna herself was seated on the edge of the bed, directly across from the door. Her eyes showed no signs of anger, resentment, or hatred, just the kind of sisterly affection Celestia always hoped for. All it did now was make her stupid assumptions seem even more horrible. "Good afternoon, sister. I hope you're ready for a big surprise." Celestia stifled a yawn, her brain still in a self-defensive shutdown from Blue Blood's audience. "Hello, Luna. What's so important that you called me up here?" Luna hung her head over the bedside, seemingly hurt by her sister's tone. Celestia immediately realized her horrible, impulsive mistake. "Important? Why does everything have to be business to you? Isn't it enough just to visit your little sister?" Celestia took a few steps into the room, closing the door behind her. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean... I missed you over those 1,000 years, even when Nightmare Moon took over. I knew you would find a way to save me, and then you'd accept me when I was normal again. And what did you do?" Luna began to sniffle and whimper, a tear streaming down her left cheek. The sight would be heart-wrenching enough to affect even an Ursa Major. "You stick me with a bunch of busy work, while you get to act like you're the queen. I thought you loved me." Once again, that little reasonable, genre-savvy part of Celestia's brain began to chime in. "Don't fall for it. It's an act. She's barely even trying." But alas, her big sister instincts took over. "I do love you, Luna. I always will. I just don't want you to face the same." All this time, she had been slowly making her way closer to the bed, walking onto Luna's strategically placed throw rug. When her whole body was within its center, a burst of magic erupted from the ground itself, burning the rug away in a pillar of red light. Celestia reared back in surprise, only to slam into the back side of the pillar. The light had solidified into a tube of transparent steel, reaching all the way to the ceiling before coming together in a makeshift top. Luna's moon pulled a complete 180. The tears stopped flowing, instead replaced with a maniacal laugh. Celestia beat vainly against the steel, but her hooves couldn't even make the thing shudder. She tried to shatter the tube with a burst of magic, but her horn refused to light. The panicked princess finally cast her eyes on her treacherous sister, who even now approached with a large, dragon-hide book, the Arcanus E Draconis. "Luna, what are you doing with that?" "Doing what I should have done a long time ago." The sister's evil glee was almost insatiable. The tome flipped open to another page, one clearly earmarked from earlier. Celestia pressed herself against the steel, staring her sister right in the eyes. It wasn't too far from the pleading stare she often got from her subjects. "Luna, please don't do this. Whatever I've done, whatever you want, we can work it out together. Don't do this. I'm sorry." Luna's lips pressed into a cold, blood-curdling sneer. "I remember saying those exact words 1,000 years ago, before you banished me from my subjects, my sister, and my birthright. Where was your forgiveness then? No, you've had this coming for far too long." A few small tears crept from Celestia's eyes. "Luna, I'm sorry." "It's too late for apologies," shouted Luna. "For all you've done, there can be no forgiveness." The book floated over to the younger sibling's eyes. If anything, it was a very dramatic spell. "Don't worry, ex-princess of Equestria. This won't hurt a bit." Luna's horn glowed brighter than ever as she read the finishing blow. The floor underneath Celestia lit up again, this time in a light green light. The princess futilely pounded at it, but all it did was tire her further. A green mist-like snake coiled from the pentagram, wrapping itself tightly around the princess as she let out a muffled, hushed scream.